Hi, everyone. Welcome to Cornerstone. My name is Shri, and today I have the pleasure and the privilege and the joy of having my little brother, who is not so little in real life, joining me. His name is Sri Raj. He goes by Raj in my world, but he goes by Shri in his world. So theoretically, you're listening to two Shris talking in this particular episode. So welcome, Raj. Welcome, Shri. Thank you for agreeing to this, and thank you for being here.
Yeah, really happy. Thank you for asking. So I think this is, I've only been on, including this, two podcasts so far.
Okay.
So yeah, this is great. So yeah, it's something. Thank you. Yeah.
No, look, it's good. So, look, before we get into what we were going to talk about, and I'll get to that in a second. Do you mind sharing a little bit about yourself? You don't have to give your exact address and details and stuff. Don't blame me for stalkers coming after you. So none of
Yeah.
that stuff. But just a bit of background about yourself, what you do. You've got a combat room T-shirt. How that is not for a show, and the shows that you do. Perhaps a little bit to help our audience understand who they are listening to and watching.
Cool. Yeah, it's always the hardest when somebody asks, what are you and what do you do? So I'm like my brother Sri said, when he said my world, as in the world of New Zealand, I go by Sri. I think it's a regional thing. He gets Australia, I get New Zealand, and so yeah, so I also go by Raj because my actual name is Sri Raj. So I have been living in New Zealand for over 10 years, and I work at Spark as an asset manager. And like as you can see from the T-shirt, which has Combat Room, it used to be my old club. It's a Muay Thai. It's a Muay Thai club. Muay Thai is a Thai combat fighting style. So Combat Room was one of the first ones that I joined. I'm now currently with another fighting club called the Jai Fighting Club, where I train and I also train myself. So what I do over there is I trained the next round set of fighters who want to go into the ring. So I coach them, and I'm proudly called a coach, which is a really cool thing. Uh, I'm also a stand-up comedian. I've been performing for I would say, past more than 4+ years. I took a break of 11 months in between because I just wanted to focus on myself. But I'm a regular performer. I'm actually a paid performer, which is great. So, and my comedy style is when you're Indian, it comes with a lot of superpowers where you can talk about, being an Indian and how we perceive the world. But I'm also now moving into a bit of political and more observational of what's happening in the world. And in fact, just yesterday, I started doing my first round of impersonations where I impersonated Trump, which went south so fast. But the whole part of being a comedian is you can make fun of yourself. I followed that impersonation with me impersonating an Australian. If that ever makes it to a video, that'll be the funniest video ever. An Indian impersonating an Australian. And all I did was say, "Good day, mate." Bollocks, bloody hell. And it was actually better than what I'm just trying to say it right now, but I'm still working on it because I think Australian accents like it's so weird when I say this, but I think Australian accent is one of the funniest accents I've heard. That coming from an Indian. It's just
Well,
like
I'm sure there would be Aussies who actually pick on the New Zealand accent and go fush and chops and all of that. I'm not even
yeah,
going to
fish
try
and
it.
cups.
I don't want my New Zealand peeps coming after me for making fun of them. So I'm going to just leave it at that.
Yeah. But yeah, but I guess that's the whole point with comedy. You make fun of yourself, you make fun of the world, but then at the end, it's just entertaining people. So I guess that's me in a nutshell. So yeah.
Okay, well, I appreciate the introduction, and I think maybe it's important to clarify that maybe you can correct me. When you say you make fun of people, it is not the mean-spirited kind of insulting people. It's more watching and listening to people and then trying to put the comedic twist to perhaps what is going on. I'm assuming that's what you mean, because I think when we think about the world and all that is going on, perhaps we can use a little bit less of the mean spirited approach that perhaps some other people might take. And I don't think, me personally, I don't
Yeah.
like that kind of comedy. I do agree that comedians, and I'm not necessarily saying I'm one, but whenever I try to make fun of someone, it is not um, in a mean spirited manner. It is more so that if I know that person and I say something, I also want them to laugh and be comfortable laughing at themselves as much as the fact that they are laughing at me, uh, having that comedic jab. So I don't know if that's what you mean when you said you're, yeah,
Yeah, so the term you're looking at is insult comic, and I am not an insult comic
yeah,
because I'm not the one who's like, "Oh my God, look what are you wearing? What
yeah,
happened? Ran out of clothes?" No,
yeah,
like I do not like that. I'm not a fan of insult comics. So when I say I make fun, is I try to see the humor in something that they say and then bring it back to me. So, for example, when I said like, "Oh, I love the Australian accent because I think it's funny because the some aspects of the accent is, to me,
mhm,
like it's very dramatic and very, But then there's so when I did my research of Australian accent, I found out there are three types of accent: the cultivated accent, then the broad Australian accent, and I was like, that's amazing because when you see India, there's just one accent and it's just and so so when I make fun of that, and then immediately when I said, yeah, that is coming from an Indian, it's taking that acknowledgement we are not perfect either, and I'm not an I don't think I'll ever be an insult comic because that's just putting one set of people down or putting an entire country down and making yourself feel rather good. that's
mm,
that's not the point of comedy. I mean, yes, there are so many popular comedians that do that. It works for them. That's not for me. And that's why it's kind of funny if I go a bit further. Before I became a stand-up comedian, I used to find Russell Peters funny. And
mm,
then I started being a stand-up comedian, and now I don't like Russell Peters because he's a respected comedian. He's funny, but there are so many aspects of him that I do not like. As now,
yeah,
because as from a comedian's point of view, I understand where he's going with it,
yeah,
you know. But at the same time, comedians that I've always seen and never looked into, now I started respecting them more because they talk about serious matters through comedy, but they deliver the message. At
mm,
the end of the show, they would be like, "Oh, if you had to do it this way, it probably would have worked, but what do I know?" you
yeah,
know. But
yeah,
yeah,
and
so that's
yeah.
just a point. Yeah,
No, fair enough, because I think it's important to have character. And that's why I wanted to bring that point up to you and see what you meant when you said that. And I know what you meant, but this was more for the interest of someone who might watch this and want to go check out your comedy, because I don't want someone going and checking up on you thinking you are an insult comic when that's not
yeah,
what you meant. So it's good
cool.
that you clarified that.
Yeah,
And look, I think perhaps I could use this character business that we were talking about as a segue to the reason why I asked you to come on. And for those of you who don't know, I am a Christian. My brother is a Hindu, and we are both from the same family. We have the same parents, just so you're clear. And it is no secret, and I don't think it should be any secret, that as a Christian, I've on numerous occasions shared the message of the gospel of Jesus with my brother because of the fact that I do want to see him get saved, and he knows this, so this is no secret. Maybe it is news to some other people in our family, but whatever, let them deal with that. It's not my problem or our problem for that matter. So, in preparation for this particular conversation, and even before we started, I suggested to my brother that perhaps we can approach it in certain question formats that I'd already shared with him, so that it won't be long-winded conversations. Rather, we're going to just look at some of the questions that I shared with him. So he's seen the questions that I put forth to him to drive the conversation. And it is about God because, as most of you know, the Cornerstone podcast has been focused on God and life and everything else that is happening in our world. And so I've given my brother some questions, and I'm going to start with what sounds like the most obvious question, but there's a reason, and I actually gave him pretty much even the points that I had under that question. So my first question to you, Raj, and then perhaps stemming from that is some of the other things that I might share as well, as I ask the question. And that first question is this: do you believe in God? And then I will, you can of course answer that. It could be a simple yes, and that's it. Or you can say yes and say further, but then there's almost layered questions that comes after it. So I'm going to ask that first question: do you believe in God? And perhaps in this episode we will stick with that question, and then the questions that stem from it, and perhaps another time we can go with the other questions that I shared with you. So do you believe in God?
And that's it's a yes. I mean,
Okay.
it is. It's yes. Yeah,
Yes.
obviously. There's no other
Okay.
second thought to that question.
Well, the reason why I started that with that question is because you might say it's obvious, but there are people in this world who don't.
Yeah,
Call them whatever you want, call them atheist, agnostic, whatever. And we're not here to talk about them, but there are people. But I started with that obvious question because stemming from that question, and thank you for the answer, stemming from that question, then this is perhaps something more thought provoking is when you hear the word God, what comes to mind? So you said, obviously, without question, whatever, I believe in God. So now I'm going to start probing your mind and ask you a bit more. When you hear the word God, what comes to mind?
and I think this answer, what I'm going to give you, is probably going to surprise you, maybe, uh, because as you know, on a personal level, I've undergone a lot of changes, and as I mentioned before, I took an 11-month break. So, in to cut maybe actually, that's the whole focus of this point. So, I believe in God, but my understanding of God has changed in well over time, but especially in the past 11 months because uh, I will tell you what my answer is. And it's funny because you mentioned a word which honestly today was the first time I actually researched on it. And I was like, oh, so I guess that's what I am right now. So my answer is when you ask me what comes into mind what God is, my answer is like a universal being, someone or something that exists beyond the comprehension of humans, unimaginable, powers beyond the wildest imagination. I mean, I was raised as a Hindu, and to me, God was all the pictures I had seen growing up, all the stone deities, the temples dedicated to them, the tales I heard of them, read of them, and even at times, as a kid, speaking to them. But as an adult now, in the time I've looked at myself, my understanding of God also changed. Although the images are still there, which is like of 35, 34 years. That is what those images won't leave, and I guess that is fine. But to me, I see God as a being because I feel that God comes to my mind in that form, and it gives me peace, happiness, comfort, like a sense of belonging. Like that is now what my understanding of God at this point is, and it is completely different from what I was raised as. But
Hmm.
it is to me what God is. So yeah.
Okay. Well, so you called God a universal being, uh, powers beyond comprehension. So from that perspective, would you agree? Like in the Christian faith, the very first line of the Bible is in the beginning was the word. Well, actually, sorry, that's the New Testament. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, right? That's the Old Testament. That's Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So, from the Christian faith perspective, God is outside of the beginning because there is nothing that is existing at that point, and in the beginning he created the heavens and the earth. So when you talk about powers beyond comprehension and beyond understanding. Is that what you mean? That this God, this universal being, as you described him, and you notice I keep mentioning not as it or that, but him. I'm making him into a person because in the Christian faith, he is a person. He is God, is God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. He is a person. He's a relational being. So when I say, or if I were to ask you, do you believe that God created everything? Would you agree to that, or is that separate to what you just said?
I mean, I'm inclined to agree to a certain point of everything you said because, like the beginning line, which says God created the heaven and the earth, which means, and you're right, because you cannot, like there, the universal being I'm talking about, there is something because it's before time, and many people won't agree with this. Maybe you might. Time was created by us because it is an understanding, that we can, because that's the thing with humans. We
So you
like to
mean
label.
measurement of time? You mean measurement of time? We have 24
Yeah, the
hours and so
measurement
on,
of
right?
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But so I will agree with that first line itself, that God created the heavens and the earth, because that is what a being of unimaginable. And when I said, like, you can't comprehend those powers, because if you could comprehend, you know, then suddenly it's just like everything. It's like, oh my God, how does this microwave work? It's a wonder. Wait a second, let me take it apart. Well, that's what a microwave works. Oh my God, it's just a machine, But you're talking about, like from my point of view, as you mentioned him, and because that is the Bible and that is the Christian understanding, and that is, you know like I would say, I would incline to agree that yes, God made the heavens and earth, because before that you couldn't. It's hard to imagine. That's, if you want the best headache in the entire world, is to try to think like. And yes, I would agree to that first line right there. There is someone, something, him, her. There was something that started it all,
Right.
because. So sorry, go ahead.
No,
You're
no,
going
no,
to
no,
say
that's
something.
okay. The reason why someone might say these are contrived questions, and these aren't questions I necessarily shared, but I feel like it fits with what we're talking about, because the alternative to God creating the heavens and the earth is the Big Bang, the prevailing theory that first, billions of years ago, there was a huge explosion and then everything came together and evolution and all of that. But my problem with that, of course, as a Christian, I don't believe in the Big Bang and I don't believe in that evolutionary theory of everything coming into being, because, and that's a conversation for another day. It's the simple question is, where did everything come from? Why did everything collide? How did everything collide? And what the purpose was? Because there are these big questions that cannot be answered. Where did the materials come from? Why did the explosion take place? When did the explosion take place? What purpose did the explosion serve? Imagine nothingness, and then there's an explosion with things going out and forming planets and stars. I am not a scientist, okay? I have never claimed to be one, and I would never say, I don't have a PhD and a doctorate and none of that. But in my very, very limited, simple understanding, you have to have a lot of things for it to actually explode and then lead to something else. The origin, the time, the energy, the matter, where did it all come from? So for me, that's one of the simplest reasons as to why I reject that notion of creation. But more importantly, isn't it also amazing when you think that there is this all powerful, almighty God who actually has a purpose and a plan for creation, for everything coming together? He created matter because he is all powerful. He created the concept of time because he's outside of it. And he has the power and the energy to infuse all these things together to then speak, because again, he's all powerful. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth because he spoke. And if you go back into the Genesis and the first couple of chapters, first few chapters, you will see God said, and it was so. God said. So in our conversation, I suppose, I think it is important, and I think for anyone who's watching and listening, when you're speaking to a Christian, it is important for the person who's speaking to the Christian to understand that the Christian is coming from the Christian perspective, not the Hindu perspective, not the Muslim perspective. See, when I'm talking about my God is, as you said, this all powerful, all incomprehensible, amazing being who can create all of this from nothing. Yeah. So there is that prevailing concept of God creating everything and not a God, aliens, interdimensional, whatever, Big Bang. I don't care. I put all of that into that side. So I think, do you agree with that line of reasoning as to why I'm asking you in that, or do you believe in God? And when you think about God, what comes to mind? And the whole, where does everything come from? We're talking about our origins here. Or would you rather, if I said, Sriraj, I'm sorry, man, you're just a monkey. You're just a monkey who can talk and hold a job and fight. But then there are monkeys who can probably fight better than you. So I don't know. I mean, how would you feel if that's what I brought you down to? How would you feel if I took all of those things that make you the unique you that you are, the worth, the value, the identity, and we talk about, and I'm not saying you should go into the details about the break that you took and focusing on yourself. So framing that, God creating versus happening for no reason, and your worth, value, and identity coming from the supreme being, this almighty God who created you with a purpose and a plan, which one would you prefer?
Yeah. And the thing is, when you were talking, and I was like, I was well, you actually said it a bit late, but I was like, God has a plan. It's I I love that line, and because yeah, the thing is, it's hard to. I'll try. I'll get back to that line actually. So going back to what you said, yes, speaking to a Christian, and you're coming from the Christian perspective, and that is how it's supposed to be. Because when you're talking to someone, and this is some of the stuff that I've written down some time ago, and even today when I was thinking about it, is as long as humans have existed, conflict and opinions have existed. You know, and that's the thing. And but at the same time, it is like when I speak to you and when you talk about Christianity, I'm hearing everything you're saying, and I'm not going like, oh, now wait a second, that's not that's no, because I am hearing everything you're saying, because that is your core belief, and that is what you put, you're talking about, and that makes everything sense. And you're right. Now, the thing is, I've always believed in science. I love science. I'm no scientist myself. I respect scientists. Of course, they're working hard every day. They're working out stuff. And you're right. Uh, there were the Big Bang. A lot of people don't believe in the Big Bang, and then there's an entire amount of people that believe in Big Bang, and then we have the community that believes in the spaghetti space god. you know. But the thing is, you're right. The Big Bang happened. Everyone's like, yes, the Big Bang happened. It's set everything into motion. But and still, what people stub their toe or their head. The thing is, what caused the Big Bang to happen? What happened before the Big Bang? You know, and see, and that is where, for me, like when I think of this universal being, like it just, it it's it start, this being started it at all. And probably it happened maybe 25,000 years ago, or it happened 250 million years ago. But to this being, time again, it created, so it probably was a matter of seconds, because in the grand scheme of that being, all this is like, Big Bang, Earth, right now.
Yeah, see, and that's the thing. I think when we think about God, we shouldn't put him into our understanding of what we know. And I think that's a common mistake many people make, is that they internalize God and make him in our image. Excuse me. So we make, or these people make God in their image, when in reality, the Bible says God made us in his image and in his likeness. That's what the Bible says, right? So we are made in his image and in his likeness, which makes us, again, in the Christian faith, in the Christian perspective, humans are not just things. We're not just like any other animal. We are made in God's image, different from the animals and plants and everything else God created. And again, I come back to that worth, value, and identity. And God created time and he's outside of it. He's the same. And there's a verse in the Bible that says he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. Nothing changes. He's not growing old. He's not growing young. He's outside of the very concept of creation and reality that we are aware of. I think my issue with those people who take the Big Bang and all those other things and run with it is that they don't stop to consider the impact and the gravity of that line of thought. Because if everything came from nothing for no reason, what value is there in life? Why is your life valuable? Why is my life valuable? Why does it matter? Why don't, why
Um,
make a big deal about the coronavirus? I mean, we live, we die, big deal. Get used to it. You know,
I think it's from, like you said before, how we internalize, how we bring God down to our level, and we try to understand. And I think this is why, for example, personally, I feel the Swamis and all who play the middleman. It's like, the like I don't respect that one bit. It's because humans have, and this is something, my therapist put it in plain words. Humans love to label things, because God is an unknown at the same time, because that is what God is. Because you cannot, because like you said, God exists out of this world. Like he doesn't get old, he doesn't get, all of that. But the thing is, but for our sense, like you said, these people now, they're questioning Big Bang and all this happened, and I think it has a lot to do with fear. It is the fear of not understanding something scares someone. I mean, if I put this microwave that I have in the middle of the Amazon in a forest to a tribe that has never seen technology, has no clue of what's happening in the rest of the world, they will destroy it in a matter of seconds because they don't know what this white box is. You know, to
mm,
them it is unknown. So I feel like, and also at the same time, I let them be, but I let them be because, but at the same time, if you are happy with something, like if you were living in a bubble, like there's a place in New Zealand called Gloria Vale. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a very closed gated community. Um, and over there, I don't know if it's a Christian community. It kind of gives off the Christian vibe, but it's over there. They're limited by the constraints of that community. You can't argue. The women can't make decisions. People are trying to escape from there. Like, and
sounds
it's
like a
that thing.
cult
But
to me. But anyway,
well, they are throwing that word around, but a community word sounds much
community
better.
sounds much better than cult. Yes.
Yeah. No, but now the thing is, take those people for an example. If I go there, I don't know if I'll survive. Or by the end of the stay, I'll probably be one of them, you know? But it's the same thing. It's one thing where these people who don't believe in God believe in Big Bang because it is how they can make sense of it. Because like you and me, we can, we have this understanding. We believe in God. They probably don't. But when you don't believe in something, you obviously have to believe in something else. So you put a label on it. And then some people will be like, okay, I guess that makes sense. I am happy. But then there's 10 other people. Now let's go out into the world and discredit all these
mm,
people who are telling otherwise.
mm.
I mean, like I said before, as long as human beings have existed, opinions and conflicts have existed.
Yeah.
In and that's the thing. Like from a from a Christian perspective, that's why I, to be honest with you, God has a plan makes a whole lot of sense. I mean, yes, you probably don't believe in evolution. I do, and that's my belief, because for me, like, I'm trying to find the right words for it, because the reason why I believe in it is, yeah, God made us, but also God made us in such a way that you're supposed to live your life, adapt to the situation as it unfolds in front of you, you know, and you become a better version. And human beings, like you said, you're right, you have identity, you have uniqueness. We are not a factory standard that comes out, that every 100 human beings will exactly, like, God gave us that choice, that you are going to be a certain species above all other species. But the thing with us humans is, we've been on that top for a long time. So, and you mentioned aliens, and I believe in aliens because, to me, the factor is, God created this huge universe. You know, It'd probably be left alone if we are just the only beings out there. Because and this, and like you said, like, there are some questions you asked me in the set of things that you gave me, and this probably, so we probably will talk about it next time. But
Yeah.
coming down to the whole point is, the Big Bang versus God, I guess that's how you can put it, is, I am believing God did the Big Bang. And a lot of people will probably be like, hell no. Sri, I'm sorry, Sri. Raj, you're wrong. Raj, you're wrong. The Big Bang happened. All right.
Without God. Yeah.
What
Yeah.
what caused the Big Bang to happen? Give me an answer
Yeah.
that makes logical sense.
Yeah.
We can't,
Yeah. So
but
yeah, no, look, I agree with you in that sense that when you pit the Big Bang against God, there are people who say, no, the Big Bang happened without God. And you're saying, look, I believe God did the Big Bang. And then there are some Christians in a rather funny way, they'll say, God spoke and bang, it happened, right? So um, look, coming back to the Christian faith, we talk about a God who creates everything in order. First, there was nothing, and he begins by creating the heavens and the earth and populating it in a certain order. And, finally, he creates human beings. Now, where the challenge comes when you say, oh, I also believe in evolution, is that the theory of evolution then talks about um, things coming up from the slime, the ooze, and then it just kind of changing and becoming monkeys and then becoming man. The challenge there is, again, from the Christian perspective, is that it contradicts what God says. God says, let us create man in our image, in our likeness. That means there is no intermediary monkey. And this is why I said earlier that would you rather be a monkey masquerading as a man, or would you rather be a person created in God's image? And there's a verse in the Bible that talks about the purpose and the plan. It's Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11, where God says, for I know the plans that I have for you. He's speaking to the individual now. For I know the plans that I have for you, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, to give you a hope and a future. See, he didn't tell that to the monkeys. He created the apes and the primates and all of that. So the challenge to the theory of evolution and it not fitting the Christian worldview is that in the Christian worldview, God creates everything, the plants, the animals, and monkeys included, all of that. And then he creates man in the image of God. So we are no longer evolved, But then you said something else, that we change, and perhaps you're using the word evolving in the sense, now that you're living in New Zealand, you have changed to adapt to your surroundings. Maybe the way you do things, the way you speak may have changed, the way you think may have been now, perhaps it's being influenced by your surroundings. But that's not necessarily what the theory of evolution says. The theory of evolution says monkey becomes man, which is a dramatic change from one kind becoming the other. And I don't want us to make this a conversation about evolution, but the reason why I'm saying that is because in the Christian worldview, the two cannot coexist because they collide in the very foundation of things. And if you are merely a monkey, or if you're merely an evolved animal, it's much easier to kill an evolved animal than a human being made in the image of God. And we now come to the worth, value, and identity. Is the homeless man on the street who is poor and doesn't have anything more valuable or less valuable or equally valuable than like you and us? To me, because that person is created in God's image, they are not less. And because they are in a poor situation, I'm not going to elevate them above myself either, but I'm going to see them as a human being made in the image of God. And therefore, love that comes from God, compassion and grace that comes from God, because I'm made in the image of God, allows me to be gracious and compassionate and kind to that person. I think it's important for whoever's watching and listening to understand. And now we come to that other question that almost ties into what we are saying. Where does all of this um, rules or foundational aspects come from? Because if you are going with the whole evolution and Big Bang and everything else, there's a different set of principles and values and ideals. If you're believing in the flying spaghetti monster, I have no idea what they believe in and what their values and morals are, and I'm not even going to go there. But you see, we're talking about morals and values and principles and ways of life. And I think we will talk about this a bit more in detail the next time around, about right and wrong and all of that. So then my question comes down to, if you are saying that you believe in God and you are kind of rejecting the whole Big Bang without a God, that's what, correct me if I'm wrong. You're saying, no, there cannot be a Big Bang without the person who banged and did everything and started everything. So that means there is a God. So my next question is, in this world, we have multiple religions. I'm talking about the Christian faith. You are a Hindu or brought up and raised as a Hindu. But then there's Buddhism and there's Islam and there's all these other religions. So my question then is this: can all faith systems, Buddhism, Christianity, Hinduism, Islam, etc., be true at the same time? This is the end of part one. My brother and I spoke for an hour and a half, and we both felt it was best if we split the conversation into two parts. Part one ends with that all-important question: can all faith systems be true at the same time? And this is what we discuss in part two. So I invite you to listen to part two when I publish it in a few days' time. Whether you're watching this on the website or on social media or listening to the podcast, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out. I pray that this discussion was encouraging, challenging, and thought-provoking. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your support. God bless you.